I guess to segue into the interview portion, I don't want to take up too. I could do this forever. I'm talkative.
Me
Um,
too. Yeah.
but tell me about Tommy Morrison.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I really appreciate you doing this, coach, for Tommy, and not just for me, but all his faithful fans and faithful friends out there. It's almost like he's back, right? He's back on the scene. Um, Really, there are four Tommies, right? There's the Tommy Morrison that the media have got out there, right? And some of the gamers probably don't know all the different four Tommies, but there's one version of Tommy that's out there by the media, and where they lift him up, they break him down, and then they have the so-called HIV stigma that overshadows his legacy. So that's one Tommy Morrison, right? Then you've got the real Tommy Morrison, the Tommy Morrison I knew, the Tommy Morrison that people didn't know, the one that his faithful fans and faithful friends are getting to know over the past 10 years since Tommy passed away. And that's the Tommy where we saw him rise up, we saw him get broken, and we're seeing him lift up again. And the faithful fans are out there now telling the story, the real story for Tommy, which is something that he always wanted out there, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? He wanted it all out there. And as part of the real Tommy, some of you may know or may not know that I went through a 10-year lawsuit to find out what happened on the day that Tommy got kicked out. Who is responsible? Who is going to take ownership of having done that HIV diagnosis on Tommy that kicked him out of the sport of boxing, really at the age of 26, just turned 27, which is really very young. And after 10 years and solidified in court records, nobody takes the ownership now for having given him that HIV diagnosis in Las Vegas. And apart from that, when Tommy did die, they did a post-mortem on him, which means that that is his final diagnosis. And the post-mortem also confirmed no HIV and no AIDS. So that's the real Tommy Morrison. And that story now is getting out there. So then you've got the third Tommy, which is Tommy Gunn, right? And a lot of people will see Tommy Gunn every Christmas. It's one of those Rocky Five sequels that comes out every Christmas, and it's seen worldwide. And you've got the real boxer who Tommy Morrison was. Tommy Morrison portrayed himself as Tommy Gunn, and Tommy himself said that he really wasn't acting. He was just acting himself. And he obviously was a professional boxer. And if there'll be people, coach, that will just dislike Rocky Five, just put it out of the picture. And then there'll be the faithful ones that will keep watching Rocky Five again and again and again, and it's like a wine, a fine wine. It starts to get better, right? Every time you look at it. And when you look at Rocky Five, it really was ahead of its time. It came out in 1990. Tommy was just 19, 20 years old. That's all he was when he was Tommy Gunn. And he would say, you know, he had to act next to his idol, which was Sly. He was always in the Sly fan club, and here he is now acting right next to him, the co-star of Rocky Five. So looking back at Rocky Five, you'll see actually it was ahead of its time, where the boxer doesn't get on with the manager. Well, that happens today, right? The boxer ends up with this kind of, as we say in England, dodgy promoter, which would be like a Don King, Duke version, right? And don't tell me that doesn't happen today. And then you've got the huge street fight, which everybody has watched. And it's probably one of the biggest attractions when you go to Philadelphia to see where the street fight took place, right? And yet everybody says, oh no, Rocky V wasn't that great. Well, actually, it really is that great, and you should watch it again. So that's the Tommy Gunn. And then you've got the fourth version of Tommy, which is now the undisputed Tommy, right? Where it's the young Tommy. It's the young, energetic, entertaining Tommy with one of the most powerful left hooks in the business, and right, you know, and uppercut and whatever else you want to throw in there. And all he has to do, he doesn't have to worry about the politics of the business of boxing. All he has to do now is be bonded together with I don't know if you could, do you call them gamers? You know, people that play the video games. He just has to be bonded with somebody that cares about him, gets him into the ring, chooses an opponent, and gets Tommy to knock the opponent out. That is the undisputed version of Tommy, where he's taking care of business in the ring. So he's an amazing character, real life character, that even though he passed away 10 years ago in 2013, everybody is looking now at the undisputed version of him and saying he's back. You know, he's actually back. Now we can go ahead and get him to fight, you know, Anthony Joshua or whoever it is, right? And it's going to be a lot of fun seeing what Tommy has to take care of in the ring. So those are the four versions, Coach.
Wow, that's a, you know, say that there's four versions of Tommy. Um, when did Tommy get named? That I think is another version that people have known of Tommy. How did he get the name?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he has a few versions. Tommy Machine Gun, right? Tommy the Duke Morrison. I don't know if Undisputed will have some kind of a tagline for him. But John Wayne, if you go back to the movies, John Wayne, his real name was Marion Morrison. So there appears to be some family history that goes back there where allegedly, and I say allegedly because it's something that Tommy did want to verify by looking at the genealogy of his family, was that the Duke was actually his great um, uncle, right? So actually, Tommy, the Duke Morrison, was his great grand nephew, supposedly, right? And one day, if I get time, I will look through the genealogy and find out if this is for real. But it was given to him to include as his fight name. Everybody has some kind of a fight name, and he was given the Duke to use, and he used it. And he had a lot of fun with it, and he used to sign autographs that said Tommy the Duke Morrison whenever he signed autographs. Yeah, so that is the story.
Or that I have never heard.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew how he got the name Duke. Um, Haven't attached that to his genealogy, and yeah, they say that everyone has a persona. Deontay Wilder is the Bronze Bomber once he goes in, and a lot of them say that once I get in the ring, my persona takes over. I'm a completely different person once I get in there versus who I
Right.
am outside of the ring. What
Yes.
other parts of Tommy's life are there personal memories that you have of Tommy that people really don't know?
So you're right when you say that you are a different person in the ring, right? He did a few interviews where he actually said, you know, you go in the ring, you're the only one in the ring. There is nobody else in there with you. So, and he does it with his hand. He says, and your mentality just changes right? You know, you swivel from the out of the ring Tommy Morrison to the in the ring Tommy Morrison, where there is no fear. You don't hear what the crowds are saying, he said. You're totally on your own. You're fixated on your opponent. And as he always used to say, my opponent, I can be friends with him after the fight. But until then, he is my opponent. And one thing he would always do when he did the gloves at the beginning of the fight in the ring, he would never look at the opponent in the eyes, right? If you notice that, it would always be down and then up, right? You know, just these little things that a lot of people don't realize. So that was the Tommy in the ring. The Tommy outside of the ring, um, he was just like anybody else. He was a human being, right? Without the media doing their media frenzy on him, you have to realize at the age of maybe even 5 or 6, he started boxing, right? With his record of 290 amateur fights, right? 50 Toughman fights before he became pro at the age of 18, 19. So that's Tommy's life. His life was filled with boxing, whether he was in the ring or outside of the ring. Now, his professional record ended up, although it's not totally calculated on BoxRec, but it's 51, 3, and 1 as his professional. So when he did get kicked out of boxing in 96, he switched off from boxing and he became very depressed and very lonely. He started to realize who were his real friends, who were his friends that just wanted him for the money and the fame and to be around him during those times. He really got to find out what real life was all about once everything had been taken from him. Um, he enjoyed music. He had a great singing voice and he had a set of drums. So he's just like a regular person. He loved pets. And the reason why he liked pets is because pets don't judge people, he said. They don't judge you. You know, you can have a great day, a bad day, and that pet will still be there for you, right? You can, you know, make bad choices, good choices, and that pet is still going to be there for you. He was very sensitive. He would watch movies, and the movies were always kind of like the Goodfellas and Mobs. He even had a movie on Don King, right? So, you know, he still had that kind of, you know, fighter in him to see what it was like on the mob side, but he also had the soft, sensitive side of him as well. Um, we went to watch a movie called The Fighter, and that was about Mickey Ward, right? And we went to watch it on his birthday, and we watched it all the way through. And then afterwards, we came out of the movie theater, and Tommy said, "You know, that was a good movie. He's got a good story." He said, "But mine is better. You know, my story is so much better." And this was way back in 2011. And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, okay." I said, "But your story is not finished yet." And he said, "Yeah, that's right." And then we did, it was raining and we ran to the car and we didn't think anything more about it. But just an all round good guy. Some of the stuff that the media don't portray is he would buy wheelchairs for the vets, right? He would donate money to the homeless. Some of his purse money went to some of the victims from the Oklahoma bombing. You know, all this stuff was never mentioned, but I'm here to mention it for him.
Well, thank you. You know, it's unfortunate that the media doesn't get to see the other side of a fighter. The only
Yeah,
thing that media gets to see is what really a fighter allows them to. Um, and a lot of times it's just what happens in the ring. The only
mm,
thing that people talk about. Um,
yeah.
what were some of his most memorable moments in the ring?
Well, I have now a dedicated official YouTube channel for Tommy, right? So a lot of the viewers on this video can actually go on to his YouTube channel, which is official Tommy Morrison channel, and you'll see a lot of his memories on there of in the ring memories. Obviously, there's a bad memory of him when he fought Ray Mercer, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that he made me watch the video fight on that, and I've mentioned it a few times in interviews where he's fallen asleep watching, watching that fight right against Mercer. And I would wake him and go, why are you not watching this fight? And he looked around at me and he had a great sense of humor. And he said, well, I know how it ended.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a kind of bad memory for him. But we turned that around in 2010. Ray Mercer and him, great friends. And Ray came to the opening of Tommy's gym in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Wichita, Kansas. And they had a blast. I had a little yellow Volkswagen bug, a little mini bug, right? And we went to pick up Ray Mercer. And so you got Tommy in the back of a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, and you've got Ray Mercer sitting in the front seat, and they're talking all heavyweight stuff, right? And I'm driving this little yellow Volkswagen Beetle. So even though that was a bad memory, it ended up on a good memory for both of them. And Tommy learned from his losses. Fighters do lose, and it goes on your record. And yeah, you get a bit depressed, but hopefully you're still alive after that fight, and you carry on to the next one, right? The good memories of him in the ring were obviously the Ruddock fight, the Razor Ruddock, and I don't know if you can see, I've got his belts behind me here. Um, so the Razor Ruddock fight, and I don't even know if Razor's in undisputed or not, but that was the fight that Tommy was most worried about, believe it or not. And there you really get to see Tommy's left hook. So anybody that's going to be playing undisputed, please go onto the YouTube, watch the fight, watch what you have to do to knock somebody out being Tommy, right? You'll see it right there. It's almost like, in fact, there's a training video there. If you want to train how to be Tommy, watch it. And you'll be able to get in that ring and be Tommy. And then the other one was George Foreman. That was a good memory. And George Foreman has always been a great friend to Tommy all throughout his career, and even to me on Twitter. He's just said some really nice words and has always been a friend to Tommy, and has never dogged Tommy for anything, has always supported the Tommy Morrison fighter and person. So those are the good memories in the ring. And there's good memories outside of the ring as well. And I just know that a lot more good memories are going to be made, because I think not only just because of the game, but people will get a chance to be Tommy Morrison. They'll get a chance to learn who he was, and they'll get a chance to fulfill his dreams of fighting Joshua, or fighting whoever it is, because he really did enjoy his boxing brothers and boxing family. That was his life and his memories.
Yeah. For sure. I'm gonna go a little bit off script here because you don't get an opportunity to talk to close family members of fighters too often.
Right.
How was it being so close to Tommy? You brought up the fight with Razor Ruddock. Um, I know I trained my son. I have a picture in the back there.
Yeah.
I trained my son. I honestly don't know how I would be as a father watching my son fight because I know what happens in the fight game. I know you're across from someone who has just as much of a right to hit you in the face as you do them. Um,
Yeah.
But being so close to Tommy, what is it like watch one of your loved ones fight? Is it scary? Is it excitement? Is it worry? What is that feeling?
Right,
Knowing they're going in there and you can't predict the outcome.
right. Yeah. Well, Coach, what you have to, excuse me, realize is that when Tommy and I met, he had been kicked out of boxing, right? So all the fights that I watched him in were on the VHS tapes that he kept. And even as I watched them, he would tell me how he felt, right? And he would tell me when I asked him, you know, did it hurt when he punched you there? No, it didn't hurt me. Did it hurt when Ray Mercer did that punch to the head? No, I didn't feel it. He said, you go in the ring, Trisha, and you go in there to fight. You don't go in there to be a wuss, he said. He said, you go in there, you become the fighter. Um, so, that's what I learned from Tommy. And he said another thing, he said, you never give up. You don't give up. If you lose, you go back in again into the ring. Um, if you're a serious fighter. So the only time I watched him fight was actually two times. One, which was in California, and he went up for an exhibition fight, right? And it was a fight where they actually sold tickets for an orphanage, and he had to be in the ring with a cop, right? Of all people, right? And they raised money for that. And Riddick Bowe was there as well. So it was Tommy and Bo, and it was just funny to watch them because I don't know how to do hand wraps, right? I have no idea. So I was watching Tommy do hand wraps with Bo, right, in the room before they went out to do their exhibition fight. And then I watched Tommy laughing at Riddick Bowe because he'd put his boxing shoes on the wrong feet, right? And this is back in 2010. So the pre-fight stuff was kind of humorous, but it was also nerve-wracking. They were both nervous. Even though it was an exhibition fight, it still meant that they were in front of people. Even though the actual event was scripted, that neither of them were going to win their fights, right? Because this was an exhibition fight to raise money for an orphanage. But you can still see the tension. You can still see the tension in Tommy of getting ready mentally to go into the ring. And I couldn't watch that, right? I just saw the humor part of it. And then when I saw the tension part, I figured, my goodness, he had to go through that for every single fight. And he told me there was not one fight that he was not scared to go into the ring to fight. And he was very honest about that. And he was not nervous as well. So for every fight, he was scared and nervous. But as soon as he got his feet in that squared circle, his mentality completely changed. The other fight that I watched him fight, which is funny, is he's been in a few video games, right? The competition to Undisputed. And we used one of his fights back in 2009 where he raised funds for a terminally ill kid who was literally 4 foot high. He weighed 70 or 80 pounds, and they had a big screen at my hotel, and they had the video game on the screen. So you've got Tommy, 210 pounds, sitting next to this little kid who's terminally ill, 4 foot high, right? And you had his name up on the screen fighting Tommy Morrison, right? And Tommy was there, and he really didn't know how to play any video games, right? But he still had his little thing that he would hold. And then he looked at this kid. The third round, this kid knocked him out, right? And but it made his day. It made Tommy's day that he was able to be back in the ring, right, where he'd been kicked out of, and it made this little kid's day to be in the ring because he couldn't run, he could barely talk, he was terminally ill, and yet he was fighting the Tommy Morrison, and he won. So those are the interactions I have of Tommy, exhibition fights and fighting virtually in the ring. Yeah, but real fights, I have to even go onto the YouTube channel and watch them and think, you know what, it was his life, you know. So you have to support somebody whose dreams were to be a fighter.
Yeah, it sounded like it was his life. Fighting was his life. We've got to hear about aspects of his life that I don't think anybody really knows about Tommy. Um, Tommy Gunn, the actor, the Duke, the fighter. Uh, what areas of Tommy's life, whether it be in his career or outside, feel really will cement his legacy? Just him as a person.
I think the fact that he never gave up, right? I think that a lot of people that probably can relate to what happened to Tommy, that are maybe even going to be part of Undisputed Game or even watch, Tommy's fights, they can relate that, he made a difference to boxing because he never gave up. And he was always very good with the boxers after the fact, after even being kicked out. When he went to the International Boxing Hall of Fame, he just loved being out there, even in the rain, together with his fans, because his fans were his family, right? And I think people will resonate with that. He's not just a name, he is a human being.
Trisha, thank you for taking the time. Come on, talk. I know I've said it already, um, but I feel like in that looking at people from a deeper side is really what's important. A lot of times, what you see on TV is not the whole answer. Fortunately, media doesn't get the opportunity to speak to the right people who have what it is that you actually see. And I think you've done a beautiful job of painting a perfect masterpiece of who Tommy Morrison was. So thank you for and sitting
Yeah,
down and taking the time out to do this.
I really appreciate that. One of the things that Tommy said to me just out of the blue, and it was back in 2011, we were sitting on the porch in Tennessee, and he looked at me and he said, I fought for my fans. Would they fight for me? And I thought, this was a really strange question. I mean, nothing really weird was happening in our life at that time. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, Tommy, your true fans would fight for you. And so he turned around and he kind of nodded. So, a lot of his true fans are fighting for him in and out of the ring. And I think that just goes to show volumes of how many people really fell in love with Tommy Morrison, right? And I really appreciate all those of you out there that are fighting for him, as him, and have always wanted to be Tommy Morrison. Now's your opportunity. And looking forward to seeing you all carry on Tommy's legacy because this was so important to him. Thank you.